The fight against forgetting the Stalinist purges. This is Libertarian View, your source of decentralized and distributed information. As the years go by, it is more and more frequent that people with bad intentions seek to distort historical facts to give a heroic costume to individuals like Joseph Stalin. Such a strategy contemplates the denial of crimes committed by the Soviet psychopath and the exaltation of his supposed achievements. Despite these disinformation campaigns, it is a gift that there are still witnesses in Russia to the tragedy that was communism and that they seek to perpetuate the memory of some of its victims. Because they are witnesses, their statements are shielded from most of the Stalinists' historical falsification attempts. This is the case, for example, of the Russian George Shayet, whose grandfather, Pavel Zabotin, was killed by the KGB's predecessor, being shot in 1934 on charges of being the enemy of the people. Fearing that people like Shayet might become a nuisance, Russia has recently taken steps to conceal information from the years 1937 and 1938, the period known as the Great Terror or Great Purge. In that time alone, the number of people shot was more than 1 million, with 4 million going to forced labor and more than 6 million suffering deportations. To reach the Stalin victims' identities, historians such as Jan Rachinsky and the researcher Denis Karagodin have been looking for access to documents from the expurgation periods, but they have encountered immense difficulties in the execution of the project. Shayet's grandfather was also one of the victims of the Soviet butcher shop. In his investigative work, Sergei Brudovsky, a historian, reports that many people were ordered to work in 1935 to build the East China Railroad. However, several men who returned were classified as spies from Germany and Japan, many of whom were sentenced to death. Although the subject is considered taboo and treated in Russia as a state secret, some people voluntarily collaborate with those who have lost relatives to the genocidal regime. For example, the Karagodin family ended up being contacted by one of their executioner's granddaughters, who felt the need to seek forgiveness for the victims of their relative. Even those who were on the winner's side feel bad about the bloody context in which their families lived. In contrast, there are still Stalinists insisting on denying reality. After Lenin's death, a real pandemonium began in the USSR, in the middle of the Bolshevik Party's upper echelons. This is why Stalin decided that he needed to adopt drastic measures to guarantee absolute power. And none of this was, as some insist, a kind of necessary evil in favor of the revolution. The bloodshed came directly from Stalin's psychopathy. Lenin's own widow even declared at a meeting in 1926 that Stalin would put Lenin himself in prison if he were still alive at that time. As much as Stalinists tried to deny it, the fact remains that Stalin was paranoid and had apparent symptoms of psychopathy. The Russian historian Boris Elizarov even published cartoon sketches drawn by Stalin, which he did for fun during meetings. The drawings show the execution and torture of Stalin's disaffections, such as Nikolai Bryukhanov's cartoon, which showed the minister hanging by his genitals. Stalin provided even the old guard's mass extermination of the Bolshevik Party to deal with his insecurities. He simply did not want to take the risk of being overtaken in prestige by any of those who acted beside Lenin, providing one by one the death of everyone who could act as leaders. These incidents only confirm what is already well known. The worst thing that can happen for a communist is to be ruled by communists who are not his friends. Among the communists of 1917, few died a natural death. Before he managed to bring about Trotsky's death through a footman in Latin America, Stalin had to content himself with tormenting his rival's family. Sergei, Trotsky's youngest son, was shot for refusing to report his father's whereabouts, even though the boy was not even involved in political activities. After the suicide of one of his daughters, Trotsky's wife wrote him a letter, saying, "Our children were convicted. I don't believe in life anymore. I don't believe they will grow. At any moment, I expect some new disaster." But if this was the hell of the family of Stalin's opponents in the dictator's house, it was no better. Nadezhda Alleluyeva, Stalin's wife, also committed suicide. Svetlana Alleluyeva, the dictator's daughter, could not stand it and ran away to the United States. Even though they cannot deny the reality of the facts, some communists still seek to soften the Stalinist experience based on a supposed improvement of Russia's working-class conditions. However, nothing could be further from reality. In the USSR factories, the workers' reality was widespread apathy, caused by strenuous days in icy environments, deprivations, and low remuneration. Even the supposed Russian scientific advances and achievements in the space race are eclipsed when one recalls that in all these areas, the Soviets were completely overtaken by the Americans. Even though the USSR needed to enslave half the world to try to match its rival. Incredibly, there are still those who try to absolve the genocide, claiming that Stalin played an important role against the Nazis in the Second World War. However, Russia's weakening under Stalin gave the Germans the courage to begin their military advances. Its purges reached 90% of all generals, 80% of all colonels, and 30,000 of the lowest-ranking officers. After that, it was easy for Hitler to convince the military leadership to invade the USSR. Hitler's argument was that they have no generals. Stalin even believed that there was a conspiracy by doctors to poison Communist Party members in his last years of life. Many of them were arrested and killed. Circumstances like these show how autophagic Soviet policy was. Absolutely nothing could flourish without arousing the envy and the distrust of the high bureaucracy. To conclude, the information presented here is a summary, but we believe that it may be useful in the midst of a flood of insanities that are currently being published in the press. Finally, to avoid severe traditional criticism, we did not use any information from right-wing sources in our content. The information came mostly from the website www.marxismo.org.br and the books cited there. So to say it's all fake news is a big waste of time. Thank you for your audience. This article was originally written by Rodolfo Andrello, translated by Drew, revised by Simon Riley, and narrated by J. Fernandes. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up icon below and share the video on your social network. If you want to be notified of other videos, hit subscribe and then the bell icon. See you soon.